want to welcome Roham from Dapper Labs. This is a special kind of talk for us because there's a lot of things that sort of tie things together from how ETHGlobal started and where we are now. So Roham is here with us. We're going to be talking about Top Shot, Flow, how Dapper came to where they are, and a lot of things in between. And of course, if you have any questions as we kind of go through this talk, please feel free to ask them on the chat and we'll ask them here directly. So without further ado, please welcome Roham.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Super excited to have you here. I was thinking through a bunch of questions I wanted to ask you, and I realized that even though I have a list, I feel like it's not going to work out the way I want it to be. So we'll just kind of go through whatever deep dive we go into and just dig into whatever comes out of this. But kind of the one sort of super interesting piece here, and I mentioned that in another panel I did a few hours ago, was 3 years ago, ETHGlobal started, and we ran an event called ETH Waterloo, and there was a project called Rufflet that came out of it. Not a lot of people know what Rufflet was, and the origins of Rufflet were CryptoKitties is now. This is where things came out of, and kind of almost 3 years later, we're at NFT Hack. And I just thought about it and I realized that we're making an event on an industry that came from that event we did 3 years ago, and just how massive and how interesting that is. And it would have just been perfect to make sure that we had you to share some of that thoughts, because you've been part of that journey from the beginning. So welcome. Yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this. So the first thing I want to do is just have everybody learn a bit more about you and Dapper. Just tell us about what Dapper Labs is and how the company got started.
I mean, Dapper Labs was born out of CryptoKitties, which was born out of, I guess it was just ETH Waterloo at that time. I don't know if we've gone global yet. Yeah, so we created CryptoKitties, and at that ETH Waterloo event, we were both, so the team was hacking on Rufflet, which was sort of an analytics tool for Ethereum transactions, sort of mixed panel for blockchain. But we were also testing CryptoKitties. So we had the CryptoKitties Alpha, which is a very buggy smart contract with a very buggy front end. And that was where we got that initial community, right? The first 1,000 people that just convinced us that, hey, this thing's going to be huge. And so the team went from, so we had a team of about 4 or 5 people on CryptoKitties until that weekend. And then right when they came back from Waterloo, we put a team of 15 people on it, and a month later launched the product onto mainnet. And so we were part of my previous company. It was called Axiom Zen. It was sort of a bootstrapped venture studio. We didn't have any outside investors. And so when we made Dapper Labs, it was just, it was a big decision. And the reason we did it is everybody was so excited back then, but it was clear we had years and years of sort of, the whole industry had years of work ahead. And so we started working with Fred Wilson at USV, Chris Dixon and Treason. And obviously ACapital and others jumped on board afterwards. Ben Rock, Google Ventures. And so that was sort of the start of Dapper Labs. And we basically got to building first a bunch of things on Ethereum, and then, as you're saying, Flow and Top Shot, which I'm excited to talk about.
That's amazing. So I want to mostly spend time on the future, but I do want to ask an interesting question. I think 2017, when all this was happening, this was sort of the time where Ethereum sort of came into the spotlight. We were seeing a lot of things around ICOs and projects, and the initial concepts of like what's working now, whether that be DAOs or some early versions of AMMs and DeFi. I think what was super interesting to me about the CryptoKitties launch was you were one of the first teams to actually blend the creative side of it with the tech, and just the level of, or the amount of thinking that went into designing a user interface and a product experience that was just more intuitive to the end user who may not necessarily know about Ethereum or crypto. Was just amazing to see, because the stark contrast was incredible. Could you talk us through like what actually went into launching CryptoKitties, from designing this thing and making it friendly, and sort of how that came to be after the hackathon?
For sure. And I want to just call out the last panel, super inspiring stuff. And that concept of those who build the future have a responsibility to shape it was literally our slogan or our sort of mission statement at Axiom Zen. And that's why we created CryptoKitties, because we saw all these ICOs but no one was thinking, well, wait a second, how far are we? Like, what's the actual gap between making this thing usable and then And then two, well, where are we going to start? Are we really going to put leases and sort of homes on the blockchain as the first thing we're going to do? Like, I don't think so. Let's start with digital cats and get people comfortable with it. I mean, in terms of the UI, honestly, there's a lot of improvements we've done with Top Shot, and also a lot, we're still 0.1, I think, but the biggest thing we did was trying to make sure the thing was fun at its core. And so when we ran the alpha at ETH Waterloo, it was barely a front end. It was just kind of an ugly interface into a smart contract. The team had stuck stickers of cats onto Pokemon cards and was sort of handing them out as to like
that whole thing, and it was just amazing to see.
just to test whether people got excited, and that's the key thing, right? In any consumer product, you need to have that hook, and that's I don't know if there's sort of formal framework for it, but I like talking about you need to have a hook, turn people's heads. You need to have legs, like it needs to have frequency. People need to come back and build habits around it. And then it needs to have a flywheel. There needs to be a reason to bring your friends, to explain it to other people. You need to feel cool because you're a part of something. And then that's what unlocks the real power of NFT, which is the owner becomes a participant in the community. They're not just a customer that sort of comes and presses a button, expect service, but rather they become a contributor, and sort of that thing just snowballs and it gets really, really cool. So that's, I think I would just say, all consumer products have to have hook, legs, flywheel, but sort of NFTs are both harder because they cost money, but they're also easier because they're actual real ownership in the community.
No, this is super interesting because it sort of answers one thing I was going to ask. So I'll just going to jump into that section and maybe what I'm going to do is, like, I think it may be useful to just also know a little bit about the intent for how CryptoKitties was designed as a game and sort of like the scale you reach. I remember at one point seeing something like 100,000 users playing with the game. And back then when we were looking at what's being interacted on Ethereum, that was like an unheard number of just kind of usage, and that blew everybody's minds. So kind of talk about the scale that you got to it and sort of how that transitioned into you thinking about scalable systems, and we'll kind of jump into Top Shot.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was that when we started CryptoKitties and when we started testing on mainnet, breeding a cat cost individual cents. Sending a cat back and forth was fractions of a cent. Ethereum was, those were sort of the good old days, right? Where you could get a seat at the restaurant no matter what time you showed up, kind of thing. And it was and the game was super fun. And the problem was after we deployed to mainnet, power of smart contracts, it's immutable, right? But the cost skyrocketed even back then 100x. Now it's another 10 to 20x on top. And massive credit to Ethereum for being able to operate at such high levels of congestion, right? Like it's super impressive that all these people are trying to use the same highway and it's actually working, but it's just costing too much for consumer products. And so people are buying $9 cats, paying $50 in gas fees. The economics don't work, right? It costs $150 or $100+ to breed your own cats together. So that's I think the only issue. But other than that, there's the game was designed as to be accessible to folks. So there were these sort of founder cats. There were the first 100 that were high priced and they get all the headlines. But the idea was if you have 2 of your own kitties, you should be able to make kitties that look the way you want them to look. And there's so many different kind of corners and pockets of rarity and sort of collectability. So being the first to discover particular genes, being the first to discover particular combinations, that sort of thing. And so, we're super excited about CryptoKitties. Obviously, we're going to continue supporting it on Ethereum. I'm going to keep giving those kitties now more functionality and things like that on Flow. So it's going to be a good, but there's the problem is to design a customer experience. Then you have to solve the technical challenges to delivering that customer experience. And so everything always takes a year longer than you have.
Yeah, just measure it twice and then double it. The CryptoKitties sort of paved the way for what people can do with just gaming, especially on blockchains. I think there's a lot of creative things that came to be because we're talking about NFTs, we're talking about digital art, but I think you sort of made a blend of both by making everything programmable as well. And I think it sort of clicked a whole new neural pathway in most people's heads where they talked about how you can actually make things interactive. How did that sort of transition lead you to Top Shot? Can you tell us a bit about what Top Shot is and just sort of how that idea came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a lot of ways, Top Shot is simpler than CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties, the genetic algorithm is on the blockchain. All of the creating a new cat is the blockchain has to run the computation and mint a new kitty. Whereas Top Shot is a little more, no one can create new Top Shots, right? You can't breed the two cards together. They get packaged up into packs. Those packs are sold. People open them up, and then every single Top Shot is an individual NFT. And the scarcity is usually fixed from the start, rather than in CryptoKitties, it had to kind of be discovered in a lot of ways. And so much more much more collectability and playability in CryptoKitties, but also more complex. And so with Top Shot, we kind of simplified it. We said, let's take the best parts of trading cards, make them better because they can be digital. So it's videos instead of photos. It's sort of interactive. They're actually Unity objects, so you can take them into AR, VR in the future. And so they're sort of future-proof in that sense. But and proof's been in the pudding. The people are, we're doing the same transaction volume on Top Shot in a week as we did in CryptoKitties in a year. Sometimes in a day. Actually, last 24 hours, $50 million in transaction volume. That's half of all of CryptoKitties throughout all history. And so it's super low friction. And everybody talks about the high dollars, but the cool thing is more than half of the transactions are actually under $50, where you can sell a $1 moment. Well, there are very few $1 moments anymore, but you could sell a $1 moment and it costs 5 cents in fees. And so that's and that actually goes, big chunk of it goes to the NBA and the players, and so they're incentivized to support the platform and all these things. So Top Shot is, it's every single Top Shot is an NFT. It's on the Flow blockchain. Every user account is a blockchain wallet, but there's nothing on the website that says NFT. There's nothing on the website that says blockchain. And obviously you can go on third-party tools, and it's transparent because it's on the blockchain. It's limited edition because it's on the blockchain. They have value because they're on the blockchain, but nobody needs to know. They don't need to know anything about crypto to start engaging, and that was really important to us.
Absolutely. I feel like you're being a little bit humble here, so I really want to press on sharing some stats about how Top Shot's been growing. You obviously talked about the volume as of the last 24 hours, but tell us about how these drops work and kind of the crazy amount of traffic you get, and sort of what happens in there and how you're thinking about the interest and everything.
It's still early, right? So we're in beta, but we're about 300,000 users that have a Top Shot. So it's but it's growing really fast. About 230,000 of those were in line this morning for the All-Star Pack. So it's highly engaged, right? And so you can tell kind of when the total percentage of a user base is really into it, that's a good sign. And then there were only 30,000 packs. And so what happens is some people get what they want, some people don't. And so then they go on the secondary marketplace and trade there. And there's been about $400 million of peer-to-peer trading on the marketplace since we launched. And we've really only been in public beta since October. And so it's super early days, but people are spending a lot of time. And the best thing is just the players and the athletes and the commentators and the team owners, and they're all into it, right? They never cared about, they don't even care really about technology necessarily. The team owners, of course they do, but it's that the fact that they can say, hey, put it on a Top Shot on national television, that makes sense. Players are jumping off the court and saying, I hope I made a Top Shot tonight. They're adding flair to their game to be able to get into Top Shot. And that's cool. That sort of shows that, it's gone beyond being, the technology just enables that, because that wouldn't be possible without blockchain. It wouldn't be possible without crypto for the NBA to have such a direct relationship with their fans. They'd have to do it through some video game, right? Rather than, or through Facebook or WeChat or something. It wouldn't be real. But now it is, and it feels real to all the players and everyone involved. And it's because of blockchain, but nobody really even, needs to know, how Merkle trees and other things work. So that's what gets us excited.
That's absolutely amazing. You can already touch on this thing. And my next question was going to be about just how did this came to be? So how do you actually pitch or kind of what the reactions do you get from the NBA, or if you're approaching any sort of large party to do this type of integration where there's IP involved, or there's a whole new sell for a whole new paradigm shift? What was the reaction? How did this came to be? Were there any concerns? What did you address? Like that whole backstory of how this actually finalized. Would love to learn more.
Yeah, I mean, it took well over a year. So we started talking to them early 2018 in the beginning of CryptoKitties, and then we signed the deal sort of mid 2019, and then it took a year to actually build a product. So it took a year, but they were great. I mean, they were super sophisticated, brought like a multidisciplinary team to the table, and our philosophy was, look, we're a startup. We're not going to pitch you on working with us. It's, do you want to do this together or not? And we're going to work with one partner, and it's going to be the one partner that works with us most closely and is sort of most understanding that this is a new technology. There are risks. The timelines might change. We had to change which blockchain we're going to build on halfway through, and all of the things that means. And so it was much more important to us that we find the right partner, and it just happened to be also the best partner because NBA is huge, it's global, it's culturally relevant, it's young, the younger fan base, crypto savvy, and so it worked out. But my advice to startups out there is do not go bet your company on an IP partner unless they're not gonna treat you like a t-shirt company, right? There's a high degree of risk in licensing IP and building new kinds of products, and it's very important to work with the right partner.
No, it's amazing, and sort of this is kind of what you talked about, where this took quite some time to kind of work out the details for, and sort of that's the same transition where you thought about Flow itself. Give us an overview of what Flow is and sort of how you came to be, how it came to launch the blockchain and sort of where it's headed now as a platform.
Yeah, for sure. And look, like I'm a huge fan of Ethereum. I hold ETH as probably everyone here. And our philosophy was just we built Dapper wallet on Ethereum. We built Cheese Wizards and maintain CryptoKitties on Ethereum. And the idea was, look, there's so many people that want to use Ethereum. There's DeFi products, there's traders, and they're spending a lot of money to use Ethereum. So if we want to have very cheap, high volume, high number of people, but maybe each individual transaction is cents or dollars, then we're going to need to figure something else out. And so we looked into layer 2 solutions. We looked into, we talked to every single person building layer 1 blockchains. And I think personally, I'm all for competition and like finding different ways up the mountain. And so our perspective was, look, we're the only ones that have built, out of all the people building platforms, we're the only ones that have built apps on top of the platforms. And so we have kind of this just PTSD and pain of sort of, what we want to do different. And nobody's really listening to us because they're like, what do you cat guys know about, how a blockchain should work or how these highly important payment systems should work. And so we said, well, and we didn't take it lightly, right? We had a team that did research for a year. We have advisors like Dan Bonet at Stanford. We worked very closely with the Andreessen Crypto team, tried to get everybody's advice and sort of, and with Flow, it's a fundamentally different architecture. It's not like we copy pasted some code and said, hey, we just called it Flow. It's a new approach to scaling blockchains, and we think it's a better approach for consumer products. And so we want to put it out in the market and see what people think.
That's a wonderful overview, and I feel like, especially with Top Shots, it's working, and you can see this firsthand. One other thing you just sort of mentioned is that the NBA deal and Top Shot took quite some time, and your initial pitch was you want to work together, and that sort of kept everything serial versus parallel, or just being able to do more. How do you actually think about that now moving forward? Like, is kind of the approach to work with another partner for however long it takes and then move on to the next? How do you kind of balance that with like what a product is versus like where Flow should be headed? Just a little bit more insight into that would be amazing.
Yeah, look, it's hard. Everybody wants to do NFTs now, from like, supermarket companies to politicians to, everyone in between. And so I think for us is we got to stay focused. And the things we want to stay focused on are making sure Top Shot is the best product it can be, and making sure Flow is the best platform it can be. And so the goal, the only way we can help everybody is to say, well, we'll give advice away, we'll tweet and sort of, anyone who wants to, any entrepreneur working in this space, happy to, I'm doing angel investments on companies building on any platform, just to see sort of more people come into that and taking swings. But the biggest thing is helping others be successful on Flow, because we think, the tools are enabled that other people should be able to build billion-dollar companies, billion-dollar brands, not just licensing from brands, but creating their own companies. What's the next CryptoKitties? What's the fart app for blockchain? We want it to be on Flow. and we want to support and make that happen. So, we're not trying to build everything. In fact, we're trying to find partners that are saying, hey, I want to be this sort of Lego piece in the Flow ecosystem, because I want to serve consumers too. And that's kind of our mode, is finding others who want to serve the same customers we want to serve, and then say, hey, you want to build that? Great. We're not going to build that. In fact, if it's a sort of infrastructure thing, we'll use yours, because we have so much stuff we're already doing. We don't need to maintain our own access API, or our own minting service, or our own even potentially marketplace, right? If you have a super advanced one with all of these sort of features, maybe we'll just use it. So we want to be kind of open to partnering with folks, and that's kind of our highest priority, is showing that it's not just a Dapper Labs thing, and it's also not just a major IP thing. You can do this if you have a group of users that have love for something, and then that sort of social value is expressed in the economic value of the crypto assets that sort of tie your ecosystem together. Those words haven't been used together much, but that's a very obvious thing, and it will sort of be obvious as time goes on.
In Ethereum, and especially DeFi, we talk a lot about composability, and then this is another flavor of interoperability and composability, because I remember after CryptoKitties launched, where so many projects were fun, and some professional attempts of being able to anywhere from add a costume or a prop on an existing kitty, because you can merge contracts and read stuff. And I feel like, obviously the IP stuff aside, there's so many opportunities to make a whole big universe. You want to call it metaverse, you want to call it a much more collaborative open ecosystem. That's just, I think, getting started. And I was just curious to understand, how do you think about composability in general? Whether that's Flow or whether that's a specific product that you're working on, have your kind of thoughts changed over the past few years on composability here?
My thoughts have not changed. I think composability is as important to crypto as open source was to the internet. And in the sense that, the first generation of internet applications were just websites, right? And it wasn't until there was enough maturity in open source that Twitter and Facebook and now Uber and all these things can sort of just build on the shoulders of giants and put new products out. Although, because these are closed, they're still open source, but closed data. And so you still have to reinvent so much, and you can't fight the network effects that these big companies create. Well, that's what composability changes, right? The data is public. The customer is in charge. They can take their stuff anywhere they want. And that concept will create a whole new class of software that'll outcompete every single thing that's centralized, because it'll be exponentially faster. That's for sure. It's just a question of when, because I'll say this at an Ethereum conference, because most of the people watching this probably get it, but these concepts, most people are still in the website stage, right? They're like NFTs, right? It's .com. It's sort of the token becomes the thing, rather than the application that the token is part of, in a sense. And so it'll take some time for people. So, but that's why we built Flow. The reason we think Flow is necessary is because every other blockchain, to scale, they are using things like layer 2 or things like sharding and breaking up the network into smaller networks. And what that does is that makes composability harder. It forces you to be asynchronous, right? If I'm talking to you and you're on a different shard, I have to lock my thing up. You have to lock your thing up. We have to tell each other that things are locked. And it takes 7, 8 transactions, whereas right now it happens in one. And so I don't think there'll be one chain to rule them all, but I do think that large composable execution environments will hold network effects, almost like app stores or maybe like, I don't know what the analogy is, because it's actually freer than anything, right? It's still, you can move it to somewhere else. You can still have bridges. It's just one hop away, right? It's asynchrony versus synchrony. So it's like, it's fundamentally more open, but there are kind of huge benefits of, if you're serving a common customer, your customer will be better off if the thing is on the same composable environment.
On the same intranet.
And in some senses, maybe, yeah. I don't know if internet's
not the best one, but I have a few more questions. We got one from the audience. So there's over 1,000 people that are participating and just watching the summit, which is kind of an experience time for just the public side of it. And then we have a little bit over 550 developers and creators and artists hacking for the weekend. And the question is there anything on your list of things that you would like to see people build for the hackathon on the theme of NFTs? I'm sure there's like a master list of cool, small projects you want to see, but we're curious if you can share a couple.
I would look, there's so much data out there in NFTs, and NFT collectors care about this stuff, like who owned the thing before I did, what else do they own? And like, I would love to see someone take a social approach to a block explorer, because like people go through Etherscan and they literally share screenshots of Etherscan, right? That's a thing in the crypto world, but that's not a thing in the normal world. And so, you know, for example, what's happening in Top Shot is, you know, if you buy a thing off of a player, you know, it shows up as, hey, you bought it off of, you know, Josh Hart or whoever, and that's viewed positively in sort of the Top Shot community. And it's almost like the player signed your thing, right? You got it off the player. They sort of they interact with it. So what's that equivalent, like not necessarily for NBA players, but you know, for top collectors, for I don't know. I just think there's such a wealth of information in block explorers, and that's something I've been harping on for a little while.
That's awesome. So hopefully we'll see some attempts in 2 days on something like this. Okay. And I'll be sure to follow up if we do. And maybe one other question that I'll try my luck on. Any hints about what's coming after Top Shot?
Like I said, I mean, we want to do a good job with Top Shot, and we want to help others be successful on Flow. I mean, we've already announced, you know, UFC is one of our big partners. Super excited about that. Dr. Seuss and others. There are a few Dr. Seuss-like things that are going to be lighter weight, you know, maybe kind of even more mainstream. And so we're really excited about that. But kind of me personally, and what we're trying to put energy behind is, let's make some other folks successful on Flow, on Ethereum. Let's help sort of art cross the mainstream and be sort of something that you know has a lot of staying power.
I'll take it. One thing I've been asking almost all of our panelists today is, I think you sort of talked about, this is like the dot-com sort of stage of just what the internet was 20 years ago. And I think right now NFTs sort of are being treated as the same as just digital art. And obviously the surface is a lot larger than just it being art or sort of paintings or images. What do you kind of think the next kind of evolution of NFTs are? Like, do you think we need a better definition, or can you give us paint us a picture for what else kind of falls into the category of NFTs and what people should be excited about, and how big can this actually get?
I mean, I think you're already seeing NFTs as like promissory notes and insurance contracts and things, and you know, this has been months ago. But like those kinds of things just don't capture popular imagination, right? And things that don't capture the imagination don't break through the noise that we all kind of live in with notifications and sort of the bubble that we already all have surrounded ourselves with. So I think that those things will happen, and you know, real estate leases and like all these things are going to be non-fungible tokens. But I think the next big sort of mindset shift when people really start to understand the power of NFT is when you can use them in actual games, in sort of 3D worlds, like actual video games that millions of people use. If those assets start becoming real, then wow, like then those people's parents really understand it, right? And then those people already understand digital ownership, but now they understand wait a second, I could do this in Fortnite. Now this blockchain thing gives me this whole like series of rights, essentially, right? They're property rights. They're things that we consider almost inalienable in sort of the physical world, and then in the digital world, we're just happy, sort of giving away everything to the Facebooks or others of the world. So I think it's going to be games. I think that's going to change people's mindset on like what can be NFT, because if my digital land can be an NFT, why can't my physical land be an NFT? If my digital loan between you and me, that's that little promissory note, can be an NFT, why can't my accountant sort of use that or whatnot? I just think there's going to be years of people having to experience things in games and virtual environments before they're comfortable, the late adopters, before they're comfortable putting, their wealth and sort of the things that they consider 401k and all this stuff, right? Like we forget that most people they're still in that sort of, most people here might have a big chunk of their wealth in crypto. Most people are like 1 to 5%, even if they have any, and so it's sort of and the other thing I was like saying is the people that wanted to get into crypto because of the anyone who isn't scared of crypto in some ways is already in crypto, because you've seen it go like that for a decade now. I mean, why wouldn't you be in, if unless for other reasons, like you're afraid of it, you think it's a scam, you think it's it's not legitimate, no one's taking the time to explain it to you. And so like that's a big part of I think the thing we can all do and the products we build is make it usable and sort of bring people in without them even noticing.
That's absolutely wonderful. That's a really cool perspective, and I feel like I've seen you sort of answer this differently in a few other interviews. So what I'll kind of say is there is not even just Top Shot. There's so much activity happening in this space right now. The past 3 or 4 months have just been absolutely kind of exponential on the interest that's happened in this space. And if someone were to ask you, is this a bubble? How do you kind of think about this, and how do you respond?
Yeah, look, I answer it differently every time. I've I mean, in general, I think it's interviews work better if you're more authentic rather than sort of prepared and whatnot. But the bubble thing, look, like everything's a bubble now in some ways. But then, in what denomination are you, or in what sort of currency are you denominating the bubble? And that's the biggest bubble of all. And so, what does it actually mean for us as entrepreneurs and builders? I'm not sure. I think what I'm trying to do is sort of put the problem right now is that in these current environments, everything works. Whether you put up, pixelated anything, or you work with any celebrity with any Twitter following, you put something on, people will buy it. And like, that's not a good, you can do that to sort of make hay while the sun shines. But I think it's good to focus on, hey, what's coming over the horizon? What are the fundamentals? And let's sort of ignore the noise and skate to where the puck is going. And so in some senses, I don't care if it's a bubble or not. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you should raise money right now. That's one, like, is it a bubble? Well, you should raise money. So maybe that's the answer. But look, I think Fred Ehrsam put this really well. Peak euphoria helps people see the future. And like right now is a time when people are sort of, poking their head up and be like, wait a second, all of these things that we took for granted, maybe we shouldn't take them for granted. And that process is going to work several months, and people's minds will be blown that, wait a second, we can have software that we can have a stake in. And DAOs haven't even started going to public consciousness. The idea that as individuals, we don't need anybody to help us govern a thing. We can govern it directly, right? Like ancient Greece democracy instead of, whatever system we have today. But then people are going to realize, wait a second, the tech's still not there yet. We still need mass adoption, right? Like you need a billion wallets in a billion people's pockets before they can start voting on things, right? Like it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of deliver what people expect. But that's the good thing about entrepreneurs. We can sort of ignore the surface sort of waves and just, keep swimming towards the right destination. I'm mixing all the analogies today.
This is working really well in your favor, so don't worry. I think one of the other answers you've kind of talked about in the past is that I think in most cases bubble imply an exit, and if you talk to a lot of people, especially the ones that are collecting it, they're not interested in selling. They legitimately want it, and the demand is for people wanting to own it, not because they can get like direct money from it or they want to flip it. And that's been the change that it's very noticeable if you have seen the past few years of how the space has evolved. And to me, that's a really good sign on seeing this actually becoming more mainstream. And Top Shot is definitely one of the key players in making that possible and putting that in front of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, NFTs, yeah, to be clear, NFTs are the least bubbly of the bubble. That I believe in, despite the high numbers. Yep.
That's absolutely fair. That's all I had, honestly. I feel like this is a pretty good note to end on. I don't want to jump into a bunch of other tangents. I feel like my takeaway from this entire conversation is that you started from an experiment and that became a feature that we're all here experiencing. And on top of all of that, I feel like gaming and just the thought that's been put into designing these products has sort of become, I feel like, the de facto way of getting people to care about decentralization without having to worry about the technicality of what that means. And to me, that's absolutely incredible.
Yep, it all started at ETHGlobal hackathons.
So I can't wait to see what comes out this weekend. We have 500 people specifically building in this realm. And let's hope the next few years are set up for even a much bigger wave of creative ideas. So Roham, thank you so much for chatting with us today. And we'll be sure to tell you what comes out of this.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
So much. And with that, we are finally at an end for our NFT Summit. I want to especially thank Zora for being our presenting sponsor and being with us on helping curate this content and all the talks that we've done together. I want to thank all few hundred of you who've been around this entire day, interacting with us, talking to us on Discord and on our TV chat. And just what I'll do is I'll just stop talking. And I want to just say thank you so much and happy hacking. We'll all be on Discord now. There'll be a lot of talks still going on today and tomorrow, but we'll see all of you back here on Sunday with our finalists for this hackathon. So thanks so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the weekend, and happy hacking one more time.